Sarnai. We are so lucky because we got another chance to discuss the Dhamma. We got another chance to know about our life, especially about our mind and the ego. It's really difficult for us to learn about the ego and about the mind. We experience what we experience. We don't have comments. Whatever comes to your mind, you just perceive. This is a rare chance. Therefore, let's talk about the ego and about the mind. Let's discuss about it and let's reflect. Therefore, I really want you to apply the Dhamma into your life right now when we discuss and reflect it. We are here to purify our mind from all the defilements. Therefore, you all have a job to do. Don't ever think that you are here to listen and I'm here to talk. No, I'm here to speak and contemplate. You are here to listen and contemplate. We both have a job to do. Therefore, I want you to apply the Dhamma into your life. When we talk about the ego, we are talking about the ego. We are not talking about yourself again. Try to come out of the ego, but try. You can't. But try to come out of the ego and start thinking. If the mind can listen to the Dhamma, the mind will definitely be a stream enterer. That is the hardest part, ladies and gentlemen. The mind can't listen to the Dhamma because when the mind is created, at the same time, because of the defilements, the ego is created. Therefore, actually, the ego takes charge of the mind and the ego takes decisions. The ego perceives, the ego understands. But the problem is, the ego doesn't want to understand these things because the ego is not ready to commit suicide. Because we listen to the Dhamma to kill the ego. Therefore, the ego is not ready to commit suicide by listening to the Dhamma. Therefore, the ego always rejects this. Whatever we talk. That's why when I talk to you, you feel that I talk to you and perhaps it is hurt, the ego is hurt, and then the ego start to reject all these things. Be careful with that. You all know that I talk out of compassion. That's the reason you came here, and before you come here, you know that Guru Hamdra will speak to you out of compassion. But when you listen to the sermon, perhaps the ego will be hurt. Then the ego will reject these things. But anyhow, we need to clean the wound. We need to discuss about this. We don't have to hide. But this is the biggest dirt. If you try to sweep under the rug, this is the biggest one. But we don't have to. We need to discuss about this openly. You may feel shy when we talk about this, because when we talk about the stupidity of the ego or selfishness or uselessness. These are the things we can talk about the ego. I don't have any compliments because the ego has ruined my life. Therefore, I don't have any compliments. In my point of view, I always see the ego as my greatest enemy. It is the greatest enemy. It has ruined my life. So as yours. It has ruined your life. It took your life. Perhaps you think that it took your time, but it took your life. You can't get it back. Perhaps you have another 20 years to live. If we don't do anything to the ego, it will ruin those 20 years. And you will die empty-handed. That's what happened to people, ladies and gentlemen. They came to the world to be happy, and they have been trying, and finally they will die with empty-handed, and they will cry before they die. Does that happen to your parents, perhaps? That's what happened to your grandparents, friends? That's what happened to them. And that will happen to them. That will happen to everyone. Because death is only for the ego, not for the mind. Suffering is only for the ego, not for the mind. Wanting is only for the ego, not for the mind. All the things we are talking about, all the negative things we are talking about, actually, the ego has these things. Wanting is created with the ego. Desires are created with the ego. The mind doesn't have a desire, ladies and gentlemen. Because mind can't have a desire. Because the mind is an effect. The mind is an effect. If something is an effect, it can't have a desire or hope. But the ego exists. The ego exists in the past, in the present, and the future. Therefore, the ego has wantings. The ego has hopes. The ego lives with hopes. The ego believes in God. Not only one, but also many. That's why many people have many gods. But everyone has to believe at least one. The ego needs. The ego needs a hope to live, ladies and gentlemen. You will create your own God with, actually he should be almighty. That's how you can survive. If you have cancer, you need God. Because doctors can't do anything. Then you will have to live with hope. By believing that God will do something to you. Therefore you can live with hope. That's why, whether it's true or false, I don't want to eradicate that from the society. People should believe in God. Otherwise, people should believe in the dharma. There are two things. The ego always believes in God. But the mind always believes in the dharma. Because the mind doesn't need hope to live. Because it's an effect. When the causes are there, an effect is created. It doesn't have any expectation. But you have expectations. That means perhaps you have an expectation to attain Nibbana. That means your ego is going to attain Nibbana. Be careful. Because when the ego attains Nibbana, it will talk about it. It will talk about it and it will use it to be superior. You may have seen many people, they use that. They can't stop talking. They always talk about what they have. They always want to show what they have. Therefore, they always try to achieve things and acquire things to show them that they are superior to others. That's what happened to the mind, ladies and gentlemen. But this is not the mind. Therefore, people lose peace of mind. That's what happened to people. That's what happened to everyone. That's what happened to you. You lost it completely. We all had to face that. Perhaps you have to. I don't have to anymore. Because I found the Dhamma, the greatest Dhamma ever. Through that, I identified the ego with the help of my teachers, great teachers. I identified the ego. Therefore, I know that if I talk about myself, this is not the mind. This is the ego. If I try to acquire things, I know that this is the ego. But the problem is, when the ego exists or when the ego is created, the ego wants to acquire all the things in the world. Whatever you like, you means whatever the ego likes, it acquires. And finally, you will become a rich person. You will become a rich person. Rich means not only rich in money, you will become rich in everything. Then, you will lose the kingdom of heaven. That's what Jesus Christ said. This is not my saying. He said that. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Now this is very true. I agree with this. But this is not not only rich in money, rich in everything, rich in education, rich in power, rich in money, rich in love. Mothers, I'm talking to you. Perhaps you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. But don't worry. If you can understand the Dhamma, and if you can battle with the ego, if you can eradicate the ego finally, then definitely you will be in heaven. Don't worry about that. But we need to do something to go to heaven. Heaven means actually the life. Jesus Christ talked about the life, ladies and gentlemen. That is the heaven. If you can experience the life one day, the life. That means if you can experience your own mind, that is the life and that is heaven. Therefore, if you really want to go to the kingdom of heaven, then you need to experience your mind. Right now, you experience only the ego and you experience suffering and you experience vexation. And from time to time, when you try to come out of vexation, you experience pleasure as well. Perhaps you think that the life is in between pleasure and vexation. Yes, but not the life. You should focus on the life. On the life. We should eradicate the ego. When we eradicate the ego, you will experience that. When you experience that actually, then you will be in heaven. This is the heaven. Actually, according to my understanding. We all have our comments and our opinions. This is my opinion. It's really difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. We all know that. Because if you are rich in love, you try to acquire many things, perhaps not things, many people around you. There are some mothers, they love so much, therefore they try to expand their family. And they love everyone. Lovely mothers. And then when you have many adorable things around you, you are possessed by the mother role. That means you always feel that you are the mother, a lovely mother. That's why when you see your kid, when you see your children, you are possessed by the role. And perhaps tears come from your mind, and perhaps you want to hug them. You want to live with them. You want to talk to them. You want to hear their voices, and you need to talk to them. You need to love. You need to love them, and you need to be loved. What happened to the mind? Right now you listen to me. Right now we discuss the Dhamma. Right now we talk about the mind and the ego and so on. Then suddenly, if your children come to you, what will happen to you? Then you will be possessed by the mother role, and you suddenly become a mother. And you forget everything. Perhaps another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, until they say bye to you. And perhaps you will take another 2 or 3 minutes to concentrate towards the Dhamma. Then your mind starts to listen. Then now finally, until you are possessed by another thing, you can listen to the Dhamma. Perhaps one of your big business colleagues come to you. When he comes and he starts to talk about something, when you see him, then you become a businessman, a businesswoman. That's how the ego works. Each time you are possessed by something. Therefore you can't come to your right mind, and you can't experience the life. And then finally you will be rich in whatever you have. Then you will lose the kingdom of heaven. But we are here to find the path to the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, if you are a Christian, don't worry about that. We will show you the path to enter the kingdom of heaven. If you are a Buddhist, we will show you the path to attain Nibbana. If you are a Hindu, then we will show you the path to your salvation. There is only one salvation, ladies and gentlemen. People have created many religions. People means, again, the ego. Because the ego wants to separate the world, separate everything, because the ego believes that there is a separation. Everything is separated, everything is unique. Everything is an unit, and everything is unique. Everything is separated. You are different, and you are here, the other person. And I am here, and the other people are there. Then I am and others. There are many things in the world. That's how the mind believes, because of the ignorance. The ignorant mind always believes that everything is unique. That's why you feel that you are so unique. And you know that. That's why you name it, or name it, I would say, name it as I. There are only one I here. How many eyes are there? Not these eyes. How many eyes are there? How many eyes? According to you, according to your perception, how many eyes? Only one. That is you. That means you are completely separated from others. Therefore, you try to act separately. You always want to be separated from others, and you want to feel. You means again the ego. Ego wants to feel that it is separated from others, and it wants to be right and correct. Because that's what it believes, then it wants to prove that. It wants to prove it to itself. That's why it behaves like that. That's why you have your own and unique thinking patterns, own thoughts. Perhaps when you see me, the ego tries to separate it, and you think that you can see me. Someone thinks that he can see me or she can see me. But there is only one perception. The mind can perceive colors. There is only one perception. There is only one consciousness in the world. There is only one consciousness, ladies and gentlemen. That is the mind. That's the mind. When I show you this, then you will see this. Everyone will see this. Everyone means actually the mind is created. If there is an environment, the mind to be created, then the mind will be created. That's it. When I show you, or when I show this, then it will be created. That's it. It will be created. It will be created there. It will be created over there. It will be created over there. It will be created. That's it. That means black color is perceived. That's the only thing happens. But each of you will separate, will feel that, oh, I saw this. That means the ego separates it. It's like you cook a pot of rice and you separate it into few pots. Now you can see a separation, but it was in the same pot. It is the same. Then the ego wants to destroy others, perhaps. It has come from the same pot, and the main pot is separated, and a small pot thinks that this is me and I want to destroy other things. That's why some people want to destroy the others. That's why they fight. That's why they want to destroy perhaps a planet finally. Because this is our planet. Don't you have that feeling? This is our planet. What about this country? This is our country. Our neighboring country is India. This is how we feel. We means I can't say we, then I'm also included. It's so disgusting. Our neighboring country. No, it's not our neighboring country. Nothing is neighboring, ladies and gentlemen. This is only one consciousness. That's what you need to realize. Then if you experience your mind one day, then you will feel that this is only one consciousness. We all belong to that. We can't say we all belong to that. Actually, if you stop separating the world, then we are the same. That's it. Same consciousness. That means the mind we are talking about. The mind. With a sound, a mind is created. I quantified it. A mind is created. With a taste, a mind is created. This is how it works. That's not your mind to be created and my mind to be created. The mind is created. Therefore, the mind is the same. You can't separate it. But the ego separates it. The ego separates it, then the ego thinks that this is me and those are others. Therefore, now you have a fight. Actually, it's a cold war in the beginning. After that, it will become a real fight. When you feel the ego, then you have a fight, because now you have you and others. That's the first thing occurs. That's the first thing happens. When the ego is created, then the ego has itself and the others. When you have you in your mind, you and yourself in your mind, what will happen? Then you have others. Now the Cold War begins. But you don't want to harm anyone yet. Until you are threatened. Until the ego is threatened. Then, if the ego is threatened, now the ego wants to destroy that thing. Whatever it is. Perhaps just your mother. Didn't you scold at your mother? Your mother I'm talking about, she gave you, she brought you to the world. But when the ego was hurt, then the ego fired at her. It happens. At that time you forgot about merits and sins, and you can't remember. Because you are not in the right mind, you don't have all the values. You completely forget about your mother, what she has done to you, all the good things she brought into your life. You always forget. When the ego is hurt, because the ego is not the son at that time. The ego is a person, and right in front of the ego there is an enemy. She is not the mother at that time. Therefore, the ego wants to be superior, and the ego will hurt her, definitely hurt her. You may have experienced this from your children, but don't ever think that they are bad. There is no such thing called good and bad in this world, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You can't interpret the world. Things will happen. You are the narrator. It's like this. I eat rice. 1, 2, 3. I can write 1, 2, 3. What do you mean by this? I eat rice. This thing happens. You will encode it with your own experience, with your own opinions, with your own understanding. You always interpret incidents. There are some incidents. You believe that they are very good. Something good happened to you. But there is no such thing called good or bad. But, again, right now I'm talking about the dharma and the mind. Therefore, there is no such thing called good and bad. But if you talk about the ego, you always must believe that yes, there are good things and bad things, and there are good values and bad behaviors. Therefore, we need to work accordingly. We need to live accordingly. But if you come to the mind, there is no such thing called good and bad. The ego is the enemy. When the ego is hurt, then the ego will fire. No matter to whom, it will fire. Because it wants to be relieved. Because it is vexed. When it is hurt, it is vexed, ladies and gentlemen. It can't bear it. It is intolerable. Therefore, it wants to release its vexation. And it will definitely do something. Do something bad, especially. Until it's be satisfied. That's the ego. Apply this to your life. Then you will realize that. When you are vexed, what happened? Before you got angry, what happened? Just think about that. Try to reflect. What happened first? You felt inferior because someone said something to you, something bad to you. You couldn't tolerate it. Then your mind started to talk. Your mind started to talk at that time. It started to talk because it was vexed. But you didn't want to tell anything out loud. But it was talking inside. And finally, it couldn't tolerate. Therefore, it started to act. It started to talk. Then you blame someone. You insulted someone. Perhaps you hit someone. Perhaps someone has murdered someone. Because of the ego. The ego was hurt. Another thing, if you associate the ego, you have to be very careful. If you associate the ego, it will kill you one day, ladies and gentlemen. That means if you associate the ego, perhaps your wife, your husband, your parents, your children, your friends, if that is the ego, then the ego hurts. It's like a wild dog. You can pet them, you can love them until they get hurt. Like a cat, perhaps. It will destroy you. It will eat you alive. Therefore, we need to learn about the ego, ladies and gentlemen. But actually, you should be gifted. Because you have been living with this enemy. I had been. And until we realize the enemy is within us, then how can we conquer? Because the enemy is within us, ladies and gentlemen. You try to win those other battles. You try to win other battles. You try to win other fights. But the enemy is within you. That enemy is creating all these things. All the battles. The battle is created in your mind first. Try to understand that. Now there is a war in Syria or somewhere, I don't know. That was created in one person's mind. Because he was so inferior in front of someone. Someone said something to him and the ego couldn't tolerate it. Then the ego started talking. In it, in the mind, he didn't tell anything out loud. But finally, it had to say something. Then it has to act. Then finally, it became a war. Now, many people have been dead. That's fine. That's okay with the ego. Then the ego will count. Can you remember we had a war? We mean the Sri Lankan people had a war in Jaffna. Then people counted. How many? How many deaths they counted? And they were so happy. Oh, there were 50 enemies. So happy. How crazy. But everybody act out of compassion. Everybody acts out of compassion, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps you said that, but you are a very kind person. I know that. But at that time, you thought that, yeah, they had 50, we have only 5. That's fine. Still you were so happy. But you were so kind. I know that. Then perhaps you share your food, perhaps you send money to those people. You help them. At the same time, when you hear that news, you know what happened to you. This is the ego. It can't be trusted. That is the beast within you. And perhaps the God within you. That's why it can act like a god and like a demon. That's why the good and bad is created. The ego creates it. Because these things are conventional. All the good things are conventional. All the bad things are conventional. Good and bad is conventional. You can create it. The civilized society is created by the ego. We all are civilized. We all are civilized because we follow certain values, certain rules. Perhaps we don't eat each other. That means we don't accept cannibalism. Therefore, we are civilized. We accepted that. Therefore, we are civilized. That's how. Because this is conventional. You can see this is only a convention. We can come together and we can talk about few things and we can produce few rules and we will obey the rules and we can say that we are civilized. Ego has created it. We are civilized and they are not. Therefore, if you murder a civilized person, it's not good. But if you murder someone uncivilized, that's fine. Because they are beasts. They must be killed. That's how the ego interprets these things, ladies and gentlemen. However, now you can see the world is run, or the world is governed by the ego. The world doesn't like the dharma, the Buddha's doctrine, because that's the only thing that works against the ego. That's the only thing. Therefore, the world doesn't like the Dhamma. The ego doesn't like the Dhamma. Perhaps you like the Dhamma right now. Perhaps the ego try to learn the Dhamma. By learning the Dhamma, the ego will do something to protect it. Because when you know the Dhamma, when you are rich in Dhamma, you will lose the kingdom of heaven again. When you are rich in Dhamma, someone who is rich, can you remember? Someone who is rich in the Dhamma won't attain Nibbana. But you know that you need Dhamma points. You always want to listen to the Dhamma to perhaps not to understand. You always want to listen to the Dhamma to know what the Buddha said. Because the ego is curious. The ego wants to know. When the ego knows, then the ego can separate things. I know and you don't know. I am so intelligent and you are so ignorant. Again. That's why I told you, ladies and gentlemen, coming out of this is so hard. Because the enemy is within you. Now enemy is planning to kill itself. Will it plan? No. Therefore, you have to be very careful. That's why I ask you each time when you listen to the Dhamma, you need to apply it. Actually, I didn't ask this. The Buddha asked us to do that. When we listen to the Dhamma, at the same time we need to contemplate. Because when we contemplate the Dhamma, then the ego can't be created. Then you can listen to the Dhamma properly. When you apply this into your life, then you will realize about the ego. If you can realize about the ego, that means you are with the mind. If you can realize about the ego, that means now you know about the ego, that means the mind is there. Otherwise, the ego is there. When you listen to the Dhamma without contemplating, then the ego listens to it, and the ego will remember these things, and then the ego will say that I have participated to 10, 15, 20, 100, 150, whatever it is, the number, then sermons, and I know the Dhamma more than you. Then perhaps one day you will meet an Arahant. Now he's ready to preach to you. Then you will say that you are a small boy, and what can you say to me? I have listened to 1,000 sermons and I know more than you. I have seen many people listen. Gentlemen, they don't ready to listen. They are preachers. They want to preach because they know. Then when they meet someone, then they feel so superior. They feel so superior to the other person. Therefore, they want to prove it to themselves first. Therefore, they start talking. They don't want to listen. Perhaps you have these characteristics. Perhaps when you listen, when you meet a person, perhaps you want to talk. You are not ready to listen. Because if you listen, you feel so inferior. That's why we have to say that you need to listen to a person who knows something, even though you have many things in your mind. We have to teach kids, we have to teach people, you need to listen to people. But have you ever tried to say to someone that you have to speak to the other people? You don't have to say that, ladies and gentlemen, because you are ready to speak. If you know something, you are ready to speak. If you are shy, perhaps you don't. Otherwise, if you know something, you want to show your knowledge and you always speak. It's really difficult for the ego to listen. Because if you listen, you are the student. If you speak, you are the teacher. Teacher is superior to the student. Therefore, everybody wants to become a teacher. Everybody wants to be a teacher, not the student. Therefore, but the problem is, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Therefore, no one gets the teacher. Because the student is not ready. Because when the teacher is ready, who appears? A donkey, perhaps. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, but when the teacher is ready, perhaps the donkey appears. Therefore, the teacher has to live with the donkey and become a... Yes, you know. The ego destroys this. Otherwise, we can listen to other people. We can listen to other people and we can learn. But we are not ready to do that. We can't do that because the ego takes charge in the mind. That's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Now you can see, I can show you 1,000 things that ego destroys you. The ego terminates your happiness all the time. When you try to be happy, actually the ego tries to be happy. The ego wants to be happy, not the mind, because the mind is happy. That's the natural state of mind, ladies and gentlemen. The mind doesn't want to be happy. If you are happy, what do you do to be happy? Tell me one thing you do to be happy when you are happy. You don't. You don't have to do anything. But right now, you have to do something to be happy because you are not, because the ego is there, and ego is vexed all the time. And don't try to make the ego happy, because you can't. Because ego is full of vexation, essentially. Because ego has wantings, ego has its desires, it always gets desires because it's ignorant. It's ignorant and it accepts everything. Whatever comes to your mind, it accepts. That's why you have many things in your house. You accepted everything. When you saw something, then you wanted that. Not you, the ego wanted that, because that person had, but you didn't. When you saw a car, can you remember? You bought a car. I think you didn't bought the first car in the world, and you saw someone had a car, and you thought that car was really good, and you wanted to buy it because you wanted to be superior to that person, perhaps the society. That's why you wanted to buy a branded one. By doing this, the ego destroys the life. And finally, the mind thinks that I have many things, but happiness. That's it. You have been acquiring many things, and you have a big bank account, perhaps with 6, 8, 9 figures. But finally, it doesn't even matter. A poor person dies and a rich person dies. It doesn't even matter. Both of them will die and go into the same box again. And perhaps they will come back as a human being or an animal or ghost or whatever it is. Then they have to live again with the ego. Whenever you come back, then you will have to be with the ego. Dogs have the ego. Ghosts have the ego. Actually, we can talk about many beings, but everybody has the ego, which means the mind with the ego. That's called a being. A being is equal to the mind plus the ego. But now you have seen about the ego. Ego is not good, now you know that. But how can we eradicate the ego? How can we see that the ego is the problem? If you can see that if you see that the ego is the problem, then we will fight against it. We all will fight against it, and we will find the way to fight. Fortunately, we don't have to find, we have it because the Buddha discovered it and he taught us. Therefore, we have the way. We have the way, but we need to practice. We need to practice, and we need to study about the ego as well as the truth. And try to understand this. Ego is not the truth, but we need to learn about the truth of ego. Ego is not the truth. But we don't know about the ego. To learn about the ego, we need to learn about anicca. There's a Pali term called anicca. That is very important. When you learn about the anicca, then you can learn about everything. Because anicca, the Buddha taught us about 3 things, ladies and gentlemen. One is anicca, then dukkha, the anatta. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. These are primordial things. It has been there because these are the natural characteristics or the characteristics of nature. These 3 things. Others are conventional. There are 2 types of views. Conventional views and absolute views. These are absolute views. These are primordial. No one has created it. No one has changed it. No one can't. No one can change it. No one can change it because they are absolute. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. They can't be distorted. Because they are natural. They are the characteristic of nature. No one can change it. Anicca dukkha anatta. But no one can find out about it. No one can discover it. No one can discover it. Only the Buddha can discover it, and Buddha discovered it, and they are. We have them. We have them. Anicca. Therefore, we need to study about anicca. When you learn about the anicca, then you will know about ego. Otherwise, you might think that this is you. That means this is I. Because you are talking about the ego again. Therefore, you need to find out about the ego. Then you will see that the ego is a creation. The ego is a process. When the ego is a process, then you should be over the moon, because if it is a process, then definitely we can eradicate that. We can stop, we can cease the process. If we can cease the process, then you will experience the life, which means the mind. When you experience the mind, that means actually you will experience your life. You are not your life, actually the life. You will experience the life, then you will be not over the moon, actually, you will be the seventh heaven. That is the heaven we are talking about. You can go to heaven alive, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to die to go to heaven. Right now you need to go to heaven. Right now. You can enter right now. The heaven, or the Nibbana, or the salvation, whatever you use. Right now. Use this to enter heaven. If you can only perceive this, you are in heaven. But if you can perceive this as well as yourself, then you are in a hell. That's the difference between hell and heaven. But by saying that, I don't say that heaven doesn't exist and hell doesn't exist. We are not talking about those physical things. I'm talking about mental things. You are in a mental hell when you live with the ego. I don't have to talk about that again, you know. I want you to experience, that's it. I want you to be vigilant, and I want you to be aware. When you live, just think about the ego. How the ego works, and how the ego fights to be superior, and how the ego consumes time, which means, again, life. Because time is an illusion. Don't ever think that you have lost time, or you have wasted time. No, actually you don't have wasted time. You didn't have wasted time. What you did was, you have wasted your life. You can't get it back. It is done, it is over, you can't get it back, and whatever is remaining, then you can use them. But when you use that, if the ego is created again, you know the answer. Therefore, let's fight. Let's know about this. Then if we know about anicca, then we will know about everything. We will know about everything means, actually, if we know the main characteristic about the world, then we can understand the world easily. This is anicca. You just need to learn about anicca. If this is anicca, then this can be eradicated. But the problem is, if you think that this is fixed and want to eradicate it, you can't. To eradicate this, you have to leave it, you have to take it from here and leave it here. But you didn't eradicate it. It was here, but now it is there. If you don't know about anicca, then you think that the world is fixed. The world is fixed, and then it can't be created or destroyed. That's how people believe in Atma or soul. Soul can't be destroyed or created. Who has created souls? Then they had to bring God, Almighty God, and and ask him to create them. People talk about souls. And once you die, what will happen? Your soul will go somewhere and you'll be reincarnated. That's how people believe. Some people don't believe in rebirth or reincarnation, but we also don't believe in reincarnation. The Buddha didn't teach about that. Reincarnation completely different to what the Buddha taught us. To be reincarnated, you should be fixed. You will be reincarnated as someone. That's how we learn. We learned about Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu was reincarnated as Lord Rama. You may have heard about them in Hinduism. Lord Rama or Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu. That means Lord Vishnu perhaps died and be reincarnated as Lord Krishna. Then again he went back and came back. Again went back to heaven and came back. That's how it is. But that means something should be fixed to be reincarnated. But nothing is fixed in this world. Nothing is fixed in this world. If you can understand anicca, you will realize that. But right now, the ego will think that everything is fixed because that's what the ego wants. The ego wants to believe that everything is fixed and everything is unique. If everything is fixed, then you can't eradicate them. That's why you didn't want to attain Nibbana. Perhaps you wanted to attain Nibbana, you wanted to go to heaven, but you didn't know what to do. You wanted to do that. Everybody wants to do something. Everybody wants to achieve their salvation. We know that from our childhood we wanted to achieve our salvation, but we didn't know how to do that. We wanted to attain Nibbana. We were talking about that. You will attain Nibbana. May you attain Nibbana. May you attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And you were talking about these things. Then we thought that we will go to another world. That world is Nibbana world. Then we will go to that world and we can live there without suffering. Perhaps that's how you believe. That's how you believed? Perhaps. Now when you go to that, actually, I can frighten you by saying that you will go to heaven or you will go to hell. What do you feel when I say that? We will go to heaven. Oh no, it's not the way. You will go to heaven. You will go to hell. Then how do you feel that? When I say you will go to heaven, you will go to hell, then how do you feel that? Because you believe your existence, ladies and gentlemen. You think that you are. You exist. Then you are afraid because fear is created in the mind. Because with the existence, you feel your existence, and now perhaps I say that because you believe that I'm Guru Handra and I know something. Now let me see your face and say that you will go to that hell, you will go to this hell, and you will go. But perhaps if you pay me, then I can change the route. I can send you to heaven. But you know, these things happen in this world, ladies and gentlemen. Because when people are scared, when people are frightened, then anybody can cheat them, deceive them, because they are gullible, because they don't know the truth. If you don't know the truth, you are gullible and you will be easily deceived. You will easily believe things that shouldn't be believed. It's not good for your education, at least. Well, you are a well-educated person, but sometimes you have to believe in these things because you are hopeless. Reason is the ignorance. If you don't know about this, then you'll be afraid. But when you understand the Dhamma, the ego can't control your mind. Therefore, fear won't be created. Only thing what we need to do is understanding the Dhamma. Just understand the Dhamma, please. That's what you need to do. Then you don't have to fight, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to fight. Because of fear, you fight. Perhaps next week something will happen to you. If something if something happens to you next week, then you try to do something from today. Because fear is created. Suffering is created right now. I'll give one example. Let's assume that one of your family members will die next week. That's what doctors said. Why do you cry right now? Save your tears to cry next week. There is a week, but you cry right now. When you feel that, oh, I'm going to lose him, I'm going to lose her, then you cry right now. That means you are overwhelmed by suffering, because suffering is created. But the problem is, it doesn't happen yet. But still you have the problem. You try to solve them. This happens due to ego. And then you waste a week of your life. I have to say that, a week of your life. Because there's no time. To do something to perhaps save him, or to protect yourself. Because you cry, therefore someone has to be a good shoulder to cry on. And someone has to come to you and pet you and tell, you know. And perhaps you can't focus on your work. You can't focus on your life. You can't eat anything. You can't taste anything. You can't taste anything nice because tears are a little bit salty, I think. But if you can eradicate fear, you don't have to worry. Then that person will die. That person will die. Then you will face that on that day, at that time. Because fear is not in the mind. The mind is not overwhelmed by fear and suffering. That's the reason. If you can use your time to eradicate the ego, you don't have to fight for anything, ladies and gentlemen. But right now you use your time, which means life, to feed the ego. To feed the ego and satisfy it. That's why you always say that I'm so busy, Swamin Wahansa. It's really difficult for me to join to those programs or meditation programs or retreats, or I'm so busy, I have this and that, I have to acquire this, I have to acquire that, and I have to save myself from this, etc., etc. Many things. You are so busy. You are so busy, and you will be busy forever, I'm telling you, because the ego is created. The ego is created. It is created, ladies and gentlemen. It is created. Right now it is created. It is not a fixed thing. That's why you need to learn anicca. If you know anicca, then you should know that everything is a creation. If everything is a formation, everything is a process, then you can definitely eradicate that. But if you think that everything is fixed, and if you think that ego is fixed and this is ego and ego is I am the ego, and if you think like that, then you have to maintain it, you have to be in it. Then you believe that it is fixed, then you don't have to do anything, you just need to bear, you just need to tolerate it. That's why people always tolerate that and live. Nobody wants to fight against the ego, because they think that ego is fixed, because they don't know anicca. That's why I told you, the greatest discovery is anicca. That made the Buddha the greatest philosopher in the world, because no one can find it. No one can. So, someone can find it, but he has to be the Buddha. He has to be enlightened. Enlightened as the Buddha, not an Arahant. As the Buddha. Somehow we have it. Therefore, try to contemplate about anicca. Everything is anicca. Everything is anicca means everything happens according to the theory of cause and effect. Causes and effect. Causes and effect. With that you can understand that everything is a process. If everything is a process, then something is created, but it is not fixed. It is a compound. It is a compound. Everything is a compound in this world. Compound means when causes come together and effect is created, that effect is not fixed and effect is not unit. It's not a unit and it's not unique. It is not fixed. It is a compound. It is a compound. If I say this, if you take these two, on the face of it, it's different. It's different on the face of it. But both of them have sodium, oxygen, and this is chlorine. Whatever. No, CO3. Then this. To create these two, we need only sodium, chlorine, and oxygen. But structure is different. Therefore, they have different characteristics due to structure. But these two are the same. If you want to create, you just ask only 3 things. To create this building, you ask only few things. To create another building, you ask the same. Bricks, cement, sand. To create another building, what do you want? But you have a different architectural drawing. But you need the same to build that. This is the same, ladies and gentlemen. And this is, what about this? These two. If you talk about these two are the same. But this is water, and this is sodium chloride, and completely different. You can drink this. You can't drink this. Purpose is different. Because the structure is different. Therefore, it has different characteristics. But to build this, to create this, you just need electrons, protons, and neutrons. To create this, you need electrons, protons, and neutrons. Therefore, they are the same, but they have different structure. Therefore, they have different purposes. They serve different purposes. But they are the same. Electrons, protons, neutrons comes together and created sodium. Electrons, protons, neutrons come together and created chlorine. And the thing is, actually, the ignorant mind believes that sodium is unique and sodium is fixed. But the enlightened mind knows that sodium is nothing but pack of electrons, protons, and neutrons. What about chlorine then? If your mind perceives that sodium is fixed and unique, it is different to chlorine. But it consists of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Therefore, it's nothing but electrons, protons, and neutrons. Does it make sense to you? Let's go back to chlorine then. It also consists of electrons, protons, neutrons. Therefore, it's nothing but electrons, protons, neutrons. How can they be different then? Their structure is different because of attraction forces, ladies and gentlemen. Because of attraction forces. And now you know that this is an effect. Actually, if you have learnt chemistry, you will agree with me. There is no such thing called sodium, ladies and gentlemen. When I say that, you say, oh, then there is no such thing called anything then. Of course. That's what you need to understand. But I know you don't understand right now, perhaps. You don't understand right now. You will think against this because you haven't learned this and you haven't perceived this. Therefore, you are not ready to believe this because the ego listens to the dharma. It is completely different to what ego knows. What the ego knows. There is no such thing called sodium. It's a secret. Remember this. Remember this until you realize this. There is no such thing called electron, ladies and gentlemen. But when we learn about electron, we thought that there is a ball of some ball. That is the electron. Actually, electron is a cloud, ladies and gentlemen. It is a negatively charged cloud. It is not a ball or it is not an object. It is spread and it is not fixed. It is only a cloud of negative charges or negatively charged cloud. That is the electron. Proton, again, is not a sphere, it's not a ball. It's again a positively charged cloud. And again neutron. These things. Then tell me about sodium. It consists only electrons, protons and neutrons, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore there is no such thing called sodium, and you can't say that sodium is like this. That's why I told you everything is the same, but the ego separates. That's why you believe that when you learn about sodium, you definitely knew that sodium is so different and sodium is unique and it's fixed. There is something called sodium. That's how we learned it. But our teacher didn't say that it's fixed or not. Did she say or he say? No. We believed it because we don't have nobody has to tell it, because we strongly believe that everything is fixed in this world, because we were so not we again we were possessed, or the mind was possessed by the ego, and ego strongly believes that everything is separated and everything is unique. Therefore, when we learn about sodium, then we thought that sodium is completely different to others. Therefore, we saw a periodic table, and in the periodic table we saw 108 or something elements. Then they are called elements. Then we strongly believe that yes, they are elements, but they are consist of electrons, protons, neutrons. How can we say that they are elements then? If something is made up of something, how can you say that that is an element? Element should be the basic thing. There is no such thing called basic thing, or there is no such thing called elements in this world, ladies and gentlemen. Everything is a compound. If you know about anicca, you will learn about this. That's why I told you, here we learn about the universe. We learn about the universe. We learn about nature. The Buddha taught us about nature. That's why I told you, these are the primordial views that hasn't been distorted. No one can do that. No one can amend. This is fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. If you can know about yourself, every inch, every drop of your blood, if you know about that, if you can learn about it, everything, every cell in your body, they are not different, ladies and gentlemen. They are the same. They are the same as this. Are you plastic or this is plastic? Because we can easily separate this as plastic because it has different characteristics. Therefore it is plastic. But this is carbon. And you are also made up of carbon. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen. What's the difference? There is only one difference. The structure is different. The structure is different, therefore we can't fix this into your body. The structure is different, but we can take all the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen from this and take from you, and we can switch it. You can put this into your body. You can swap it. Nothing will happen, don't worry. But we can't fix this because this has a different structure. But when it comes to carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, they are the same. You breathe carbon dioxide, it goes to a tree, and tree produce means, we'll talk about that later. Then, actually this is scientific, ladies and gentlemen. This is scientific. That's why this is so appealing. Because we have learned science, and that was truth. That's what's true, I'm telling you, that's what's true. What we have learned is true. But how we perceived it was wrong. Therefore, what we do is, we take Buddhism. We take the Buddha's philosophy, which is nature. And we take modern science. Actually, the modern science always discovers the truth of nature. The Buddha discovered the truth of nature. Therefore, they are the same. I'm telling you, they are the same. Therefore, if you have learnt about science, if you learn science, modern science, that's good. Use that with a new perception. There is no such thing called sodium. Sodium is an effect, and it is full of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Then if we remove all the attraction forces between them, what will happen? Due to attraction forces, sodium exists. Sodium, because that is structure exists. Due to attraction forces. If you remove all the attraction forces, what will happen? They will become just electrons, protons, and neutrons. Then if we take all the attraction forces out of electrons, protons, and neutrons, what will happen? Then they will become something called Suddhastaka. This is Pali term. Suddhastaka. It's just a name. Then if you remove that, then it will become the energy which is released from the mind. The mind is the creator. The mind creates everything, ladies and gentlemen. But let's stop from there. Otherwise, it will too philosophical. Then you will become a philosopher with a great beard, perhaps. You don't have to think about all these things. You just take a bit of this. Don't go deeper. Because the devil's in the detail. Don't go deeper. You are not here to be a philosopher. You are here to be a freedom fighter. You are a soldier. You are a fighter. You are going to fight against ego and you are looking for freedom. But if you want to learn more, then you want to be a prisoner. You will be a prisoner if you want to learn more. That's why I don't want to talk about these things a lot. Perhaps people think that why this Swami not say always teach us simple things. Teach us simple things. Sometimes people think that. Then I would say, please don't listen to me. You have the Tripitaka here. You can read it. You can read it and finish it. And read it 10 times or 15 times until your death. Read it. Then you will become a philosopher. But you can't become a freedom fighter with the knowledge, ladies and gentlemen. You just need to know only a bit. Only a bit. Only a bit is enough. Hetum paticca sambhutang hetu bhanga nirujjati is enough. You don't have to look for other things. Because the Buddha taught 1 million people. At that time, there are many suttas for many people. Not for you. If you met the Buddha at that time, you will listen, or you would listen to only one sutta. Then if you ask the second one, then you will be kicked off. Then perhaps he asked, why would you want second one? Why would you want the second one if I gave you one? Therefore, please understand this, reading doesn't help. We just need to talk about the same thing over and over again until we realize it. Not understand it until we realize it. I'm talking about the realization. You need to realize your life. You need to realize the world. When you realize the world, the ego can't be created because ego is created in a dark environment. It is created in the darkness of ignorance. You need to enlighten your mind. You have to create an environment which is created with the dharma. To do so, we need to discuss these things, not vast things. Let's go back to this again. Now, if we know about sodium, but we feel that it is fixed and it is different, but we know that it's an effect. Then if you look at it as an effect, it is only a pack of subatomic particles. If you look at the chlorine, then you will see a pack of subatomic particles. Therefore, this is an effect. It is proven. It is an effect. With the wrong perception, we thought that it's fixed and it's different. When you apply anicca into this, it works. This is anicca. This is a compound finally. But this is not for the exams. This is only for your knowledge. This is an element in the syllabus. But in reality, this is a compound. This is a compound. Electron itself is a compound, ladies and gentlemen. Everything is a compound. Everything is a compound because everything is an effect. Everything is an effect. Not only these matters, not only this matter, energy is also an effect. The mind is also an effect. Defilements also are effects. Therefore, if we talk about ignorance, it's an effect. It's a compound. It's a process. Therefore, if you don't want it, you can eradicate it. That's up to you. Suffering is a compound. It's not an element. If you don't want it, you can eradicate it. Vexation is a compound. Ego is a compound. The ego is a compound. If you don't want it, you can eradicate it. This is the worst thing. This is the worst thing, ladies and gentlemen, the ego wants to hear. The worst thing is the ego is an effect. That's why that is the rarest thing in the world, because the ego doesn't want this truth to be alive. Therefore, it will be hidden so very quickly, so soon. When you take a stanza, the Buddha's stanza, there are many stanzas. If you take a stanza, then you will read it. When you read it, you will see the ego's perception. Because the ego reads it, then the ego perceives differently. Let's take an example. Arogya Parama Labha. When you hear that, Arogya Parama Labha, health is wealth. Arogya Parama Labha, health is wealth. Good. Now, we have a saying called health is wealth. But that's not came from the Buddha. If it came from the Buddha, then it should be it should be displayed in a temple, in temples. But this is displayed in hospitals. Because people can't get the noble meaning. Because noble meaning is always hidden. Because the ego can't understand the noble meaning, ladies and gentlemen. That's why when we talk about the Buddha, I had to use Pali terms. Is that okay? I had to use Pali terms. And the Buddha said, Jati. Buddha said, Jati, Jara, Vyadi, Marana. Jati. Jati means the ego. Jati is ego. But when you see jati, you perceive it as it's a separation. It's a separation from others. We like caste, nationalism. Whatever the national, now Sri Lankan, Indian, Pakistani, whoever. But the Buddha interpreted it as the ego. But do you really think that the ego will recognize it? The ego wants to recognize this? No, ego wants to hide this. Because the ego doesn't want to be revealed. When the ego is revealed, it will be destroyed. That's why we always talk about the ego in the sermon. When you talk about the ego, you will know about the ego. When you know about the ego, then the ego can't be created, because you will be enlightened about the ego. Right now, perhaps the mind is so ignorant, therefore the mind accepts it. The mind is okay with it, perhaps, because the mind doesn't know about that. That's why we need to learn. But the ego can't understand noble things, noble meanings. That's why we always missed real meanings of these things. That's why people fight for these things. When an ignoble person reads Lord Buddha's stanzas, they have different perceptions, but they think that that's correct. Ego is egoistic, you know that. It doesn't want to be inferior. Therefore they fight for that. They argue to win. They don't want to understand the truth. They try to practice and they fail. And finally they decide that they have practiced correctly, but the dharma is distorted. That's the problem. Oh, Nibbana is not there anymore. You can't attain Nibbana. That's how people decided. Right now we talk about Nibbana, ladies and gentlemen, but before people didn't talk about that. Before people completely stopped thinking about their salvation, because they strongly believe that Nibbana is not anymore. Because the ego can't understand these things. And the ego wants to fight for their opinions. Therefore, when they read something, they realize something, but the Buddha said completely different to that. Buddha said something completely different to that. All these words are distorted. They have been distorted. But if you start to practice, you will understand this. That's why I want you to practice, ladies and gentlemen. I can tell these are my opinions. I talk about rich. Jesus Christ once said about rich, a man, someone who is rich. I told you my opinions. But you need to think. You need to think, and then you will realize. Then I told you about kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven. And these are my opinions. But you can understand that. And I want you to apply into your life, and you will think accordingly. Then you will realize that. That's how we should understand this. Otherwise, you can't find Nibbana or your salvation in words. Anicca is a word, ladies and gentlemen. It has a great meaning. I can't explain that meaning within a second, within a year, within my lifetime. Because that's your understanding. You need to understand that. I can enlighten you a bit. I can show you the path a bit. Then finally you should start your journey. Therefore, when we talk about these things, you need to start your journey. You need to discover this. You need to apply this to everything. Then you will realize that the ego is always the ego always try to hide these things. The ego doesn't want to understand these things. And ego doesn't like. And the ego doesn't like to understand these things. But we are in a battle against the ego. Therefore, let's apply it. Now you can see this is an effect. Sodium is an effect. Carbon is an effect. That means it's a compound. Then if you don't want carbon, you can remove it. You can remove it means actually you can stop the process. This is a process. This light is process. Light emits from the bulb. It's a process, ladies and gentlemen. You can cease the process by switch it off. It's a process. Your whole body is a process. If you stop eating, you can be disappeared. Actually, you can breathe until your body becomes a skeleton. You can breathe. If you don't eat, if you stop eating and start to breathe, that's enough. If you don't die, let's assume that you don't die until you become a skeleton, and you can become a skeleton. Because when you breathe, carbon comes out, but you don't take carbon in. You don't inhale carbon, you only exhale. Where does it come from? Carbon. When you breathe, you take only oxygen. But when you breathe out, you release carbon. Where does it come from? From your cells. Your cells use energy. And energy is stored as bonds between carbon and hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen. In between them, there are bonds between them. Then bonds means energy again. That energy is used and carbon is released. That's why when you breathe out, carbon comes out as carbon dioxide. Then if you stop eating, then you can't take energy in, but you release carbon dioxide, which means you use energy, and carbon is released as carbon dioxide, hydrogen is released as water, and oxygen is released as water or carbon dioxide, but you take oxygen in as well. However, then if you don't take energy in and if you breathe out carbon dioxide, then you will become a skeleton. Now you should understand that you are nothing but a bag of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. But you still think that you are different to the other person. And you still think that I am, and they are others. But I want you to understand this. But again, be careful with the ego. This is the truth, but the mind doesn't want to understand this. That's why I ask you to contemplate. Why should I ask you to contemplate? If you know the truth, then you should contemplate. Then why should I ask you to contemplate? Why should you be in noble association? Because someone has to, not force, actually someone has to ask you to do that. Because the ego doesn't want to do that, even though it's the truth. Now I proved it to you. I have proven it. Yes or no? I have proven it. Your body is not different to others. This is only a bag of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, calcium, so on and so forth. Everyone is the same. Everybody is the same. But still you perceive, which means the ego perceives differently. Therefore, you need to work against this. You need to contemplate. You need to contemplate against the ego, ladies and gentlemen. Against the ego. Therefore, when you live, apply the Dhamma. When you live, apply the Dhamma. When you walk, apply the Dhamma. When you walk, you breathe. You breathe because you use energy. Perhaps you breathe highly. You need more oxygen. You need more oxygen and you release more carbon dioxide at that time. Why? Because energy is used. When energy is used, those bonds are broken. When bonds are broken, now the others are waste. Actually, carbon and oxygen, they are carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, all these things are waste products. The body needs only energy. Therefore, bonds are broken and energy is used, then waste is released. This is the body. This is a machine, ladies and gentlemen. This is not who you are. This is a machine. With the help of this body, a mind is created. A mind is created means when the mind actually it's also a creation. Each time it is created. It is created with vipaka. Vipaka means some energy. That energy is used the mind to be created. And the energy is restored due to defilements. That's the cycle. That's called samsara. You may have heard about the word samsara. That is the samsara. But people think that samsara is so long and we can't see that end and this end. But that's how the ego interprets this. Anamatago yam bhikkave sansaro pubbha kotina paññāyati. That's what the Buddha said. But interpretations are completely distorted. Because the ego interprets it. Now, anamatago yam bhikkave sansaro pubbha kotina paññāyati. The egoic opinion or egoic interpretation is samsara is like this. Samsara is like this. This is the beginning and you can't see the beginning and you can't see the other end. Therefore you can't see both ends. Samsara is that long. But that is the egoic interpretation. Otherwise, what we have understood is give me another day. I will explain what we have understood. Because what we have understood is not words, ladies and gentlemen. I need more time to put my understanding and my teacher's understanding into words. But egoic expression is so simple. We just need to, that's it. You should be able to read between lines. Then you will see the truth. Therefore, don't ever listen to an egoic person, but you don't know whether the person is egoistic or not. Therefore, you have to listen to everyone, but be very, very careful. Samsara, I will draw and show you. But again, whatever I draw is anicca. When I talk about samsara, it's anicca. If you don't want, let me know. I'll show you how to eradicate that. Whatever. If suffering, vexation, lamentation, fear, whatever. If you don't like, let me know. I'll tell you how to eradicate. I can't eradicate it for you, but I can tell you how to eradicate that. But the ego, you won't believe this, ladies and gentlemen. The ego loves suffering and vexation. Okay, give me the answer for this. When you have a headache, are you okay to live with the headache, or are you okay to die? You have your wedding just after 5 minutes, but or you have a party to attend. You have a party to attend, and your wedding, but now just before 5 minutes, you have a headache. If you commit suicide at that time, you won't have headache, and you will go to heaven. I can guarantee. I will make a deal with whoever, the creator. I will do that. Just tell me, are you willing to die? You have a headache. No, ladies and gentlemen, you are okay with the headache. You can live with the headache. That's why everybody wants to go to the heaven. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one is ready to die. No one wants to die, ladies and gentlemen. No one wants to die, because the ego doesn't want to die. The ego wants to exist. It can live without limbs. It doesn't want to attain Nibbana. Therefore, we think that if someone lost his limbs, and we think that, oh, he's suffering. But if we start preaching to him the dharma to attain Nibbana, he will plug his ears, because he doesn't want to listen, because he wants to exist. He wants to live, because the ego thinks that this world is so pleasurable because it's so ignorant. Therefore, the ego wants to live. The ego doesn't want to attain Nibbana. That's why when we preach, we never talk about the end. When you become an arahant, you won't be born again. But we don't talk about that, don't worry. Talk to someone who's new to this philosophy, and tell him that I have a philosophy, and if you practice that, you won't be born again. He will run away from you. Perhaps talk to a beggar. He's a beggar, he's begging. He doesn't have whatever he wants, but he has hope. He has a dream, even though he is a beggar. He has a dream, he has hope. Therefore, he wants to live. Everybody wants to live. Please understand this, ladies and gentlemen. This is the ego. The most foolish thing in the world. The ego. Therefore, when you are with the ego, I said that. Didn't you hear? That is the most foolish thing ever. The ego. But when you are with the ego, when the mind is taken by the ego, that's why from time to time people show their foolishness. Especially when they show that in front of a noble person. The ego, so silly. So silly, but people have to act, ladies and gentlemen. The ego acts. From today, perhaps we will be able to recognize the ego. Try to recognize the ego within you first. Don't try to recognize the ego in other people. Try to recognize the ego within you. Whenever you act, try to learn about it. Then you will see how egoistic you are and how silly. But you have to. You have to. Because the ego should feel superior. Therefore you have to. Anyway, now, next week we will talk about Anamataggoyam Bhikkave Sansaro Pubbha Kotina Panyayati. Just before that, I think we don't have time to go for this. I will explain to you next week, but please remind me. I will explain to you about samsara. What is samsara? How the samsara is created. It's a circle. It's a circle or it's a cycle. It's a cycle, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a line. Therefore you can't say that I have been. No one is being. No one is being there. It is created right now. One cycle is samsara. That cycle is samsara. It doesn't belong to anyone. There is a cycle, there is a process. That process occurs. And it's a natural process. And it lasts long forever. If you don't meet the Buddha, until you meet the Buddha, it lasts long forever. Until you meet the Buddha. You are so fortunate, so lucky. Therefore, you are here. I am so lucky. We all are lucky, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps you can't understand how lucky we are. I try to imagine that. I can't. Therefore, don't ever think that you can price this chance. This is priceless. This meeting, this discussion, this meeting is not just a speech. Here we gather to talk about our salvation. The real salvation. I can guarantee that. This is the real salvation. Wherever you go, the ego will be with you. When you become a god, the ego will be with you. Then you will try to be superior to other gods. Then you will suffer. You will have to live with hopes. Then you will suffer. And you will have to live with expectations. You will suffer. Wherever you are, you have to live with expectations, because if the ego takes desires into it, a desire causes you to vex, you to be vexed. Therefore, if the mind takes desires, if the mind accepts desires, then the mind has to suffer wherever it is. It doesn't matter wherever it is, it will suffer. Perhaps in the heaven, perhaps in Brahma world, beyond the heaven. Perhaps in hells, perhaps in human world, perhaps in animal kingdom, wherever you are, if the mind exists, due to ignorance and attachment, the ego exists. Therefore, you don't have to try to be someone else. This is enough, because you can understand the dharma, this is enough. But if you are an animal, you need to try to be a human being. Because animals can't understand. You know that. I don't have to insult animals, because perhaps your ego will be hurt if I insult an animal. Oh, dogs are very intelligent. Why did you insult dogs? In Sri Lanka, we can do that. Perhaps in some foreign countries, if we talk something bad about pets, dogs, they get hurt. I really want to help them, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not talking about their kids. I'm talking about their pets. Not pets. I'm not talking about their pets. I'm talking about animals. But still, the ego gets hurt. Why do you insult dogs? Dogs are our pets. Therefore, it's really difficult for us to explain things to them. And we are there as their Salvation Army. We are going to save them. We are going to save you, listen. We are here to save you. Therefore, you can't be hurt. You can't reject these things. But the ego rejects these things. Therefore, let's be very careful. Let's be very careful. And this is enough. You don't have to be anyone. You don't have to be a god. Therefore, don't try to go to heaven. Let's create the kingdom of heaven within you. Let's experience the mind, then you will experience the life, and that will be the kingdom of heaven. To do so, you don't have to be poor in money, in education. You just need to understand them. You can have whatever you have. Money, your education, wealth, whatever you have, you can keep it with you. But we will eradicate the ego. Because the ego uses these things to be superior. That's why the ego acquired them, but now you have them, but you don't have them on your head, do you? How much money do you have on your head right now? Nothing. That's in your account. How many pieces of land you have in your bag? You acquired. Nothing. It is on the earth. You can't carry them. You can carry them in your mind by thinking that I am a landowner. That's ego's job. Therefore, don't worry about this. You don't have to be poor. You just need to understand. You can keep your wealth, you can keep your education, you can keep your children, you can keep everything what you have, but I want you to understand the dharma and not be identified with these things. Let's keep these things and let's live the life. Then you can have both of them. You can have the life and the wealth. Because you have acquired it. You don't have to sell. You don't have to give up. You have acquired it. You can keep it with you. But don't be identified with them. The mind is mind. It is the mind. It is the life. Let's eradicate the ego. And we can enjoy you can enjoy your mind, money. You can enjoy your wealth. That doesn't matter. That makes luxurious. That's fine, ladies and gentlemen. You can live in a beautiful palace. The Buddha didn't ask you to live in a cottage or live in somewhere or be a homeless person. You don't have to do that. You can have your wealth. The only problem is your mind is identified with all these things and think that I'm a rich person, I'm a well-educated person, so on. That's the problem. With the ego, you have acquired it. By acquiring it, you have lost your life and you have wasted your life. I'm sorry to say that. You have wasted your life because you lost your life and you don't have anything right now. You acquired pieces of land, and you acquired money, you acquired everything, but you don't have anything right now. You have only vexation, and you try to come out of vexation. Or you try to achieve your salvation. Right now you don't have anything, but you have spent 50, 60, 70 years of your life. When we come to the end, when we don't have anything, and again no one will put money into your coffin, then whatever you acquired, you had to keep. You had to leave here and go back. Therefore, be ready, be a freedom fighter. We are not philosophers, remember this. We are freedom fighters. We fight for our freedom. Don't ever think that you are freed. You are not. You are a slave to yourself. You are a slave to the ego. Therefore, we need to destroy this, which means the ego, and we never serve to this master. You can only serve to one master, either the Buddha, which means Nibbana, or the salvation. Otherwise, the ego, which is the evil master, who have been destroying your life and who will destroy your life. But we will fight together. We will fight together. The Buddha's dharma still alive. The Buddha's power, which means the power of Nibbana, the energy of Nibbana is still alive. Therefore, we all will be saved. But you need to work with determination, courage, and enthusiasm. You have to develop all these things. No one is there to tell me to attain Nibbana, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want anyone to tell me to attain Nibbana. If someone tells me to attain Nibbana, I should slap myself. If I am a slave and I have a chance to free myself, then why do I expect someone to tell me? Therefore, I always work with determination, courage, and enthusiasm. I'm so fanatic and enthusiastic to attain Nibbana for my freedom. I'm not being egoistic. What I'm saying is, what my teachers ask me to do, I do it. I don't need my teachers to force me to attain Nibbana, which means to free myself. I'm suffering. If I'm suffering, I know I should free myself. I think you all know the same. Therefore, we will fight together. I can't say whenever you are free, come to the sermon. I had to say, you must come to the sermon. That's I told you last time. If you were my parents, if you were my father or mother, I will force you to come every day. I love you all as I love my parents. I can't feel these are my parents and these are not. That's I told you, I'm so lucky in that way. I can't see they are Indian, they are Chinese, they are Japanese. I can't see them, ladies and gentlemen. I love everyone. I want to help everyone. I can tell son to everyone. Like we tell son to our kids, puta. I feel the same. There is a saying called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That means the entire world is a family. We can do that if you can eradicate the ego. With the ego, you can't do that. Ladies and gentlemen. If someone tries to do it, he will be destroyed. He will be rejected from the society. Because the ego wants to separate, and someone needs to make the entire world a family. It can't happen. But we can do that. In our monastery, we have seen. We have many people who speak different languages. That completely doesn't matter. Completely, we learn all the languages. We try to learn languages, and we can't feel that. And this person is ours, and the other person belongs to someone. No. That's why we invite everyone, black or white, whatever it is. We invite everyone because we are. Actually, we belong to the same consciousness. One day you will realize that, and we will do together. And we will see you next week. May the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you all. Thank you.